Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about good mornings and why they are the #1 squat accessory and why we want our good morning to be as strong as our squat. And that's irrespective of whether you choose to max out on the good morning or not. You can still extrapolate that over. Because if you're doing 10s on a good morning and you don't max out, well, you should be able to do 10 reps with 70% of your max. So if you squat 400 pounds, you should be able to take a calculator, multiply that times 0.7, and you should be able to do 10 rep sets with that on the good morning. The only difference is that the safety bar is going to be a little different in the leverages, but all your other bars, whether it's a straight bar, buffalo bar, cambered bar, any of those, it should be equal. And the reason for that is because when we look at a squat, and when I talk about a squat, we're talking about a power squat. I'm not talking about an Olympic squat because I don't coach Olympic lifters. This channel isn't primarily focused around Olympic lifting. It's around strength and muscle building, right? And the muscle building is because we need muscle for strength and athleticism. Hypertrophy is what raises our strength ceiling. Okay, we need to be as big as possible, within the confines of a weight class, because a lot of people out there compete in a weight class sport, and I get that. But most of you guys who are worried about getting too big, that's a separate topic. If you're clean, you should never be worried about getting too big for your weight class unless you're too tall for your weight class, in which case you need to rethink what you're doing as an athlete. So back over to the point. Barring weight classes, we need to carry as much muscle as our frame will allow if we want to be as strong as possible and we want to be as powerful as possible. So the good morning builds all the muscles of the squat, of the power squat, other than the quads. Also, if you watch a properly executed good morning, notice with a good morning you push your hips and your butt back and you bend at the hips. You are not rounding your back. And this is one of the big mistakes. I'll see people who are like, well, Jason, you talk about good mornings. I've been doing them here. I got 225 for 3, and they'll send me a link to the video over on the Facebook fitness page, right? They'll send me a link, and they're not pushing their hips back, and they're rounding their low back for at least 3 inches of the last 3 inches of the movement. It's like, no, you push your hips back, all right? What should be moving on a good morning? Your hips, your hip extensors. Your hip extensors. And that's the joint that should be moving. Your back should be relatively stationary. Now, the exception being there are rounded back good mornings, particularly with the safety bar that we would do as a weak point training tool. But that goes to show you how versatile the good morning is, especially when we deal with different bars, different stances. It's a very, 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 very versatile tool. But in its most basic format, it is a power squat where you don't bend the knees. And since you don't roll your back on a squat, you're not rolling your back on the good morning. You're not rounding it. You're doing the same motion you would do on a squat, right? Which is hip extension and knee flexion, right? You're bending the knees and bending the hips. On a good morning, you're just doing very, very little knee bend. You're doing less knee bend. So accordingly, if you look at that, what muscles get worked differently? Most of the muscles involved with the squat are involved in stabilizing it with your torso, and they're involved with hip extension. The only muscle that contributes to the knee flexion component and then the extension on the way back up are the quads. But the quads are also a hip extension muscle. So they are being worked on the good morning. It's just that the lower part of the quad isn't being activated sufficiently. Okay, so here's where I'm going to go with this. This trains the majority. This trains 90% of the muscle mass used in the squat, and it hits many of those muscles in a more difficult manner. Now, if you notice on any power squat, you basically are bending at the hip and you are extending your torso back up on the way up. It is a good morning. And there's a difference between people talking about a good morning squat, which actually doesn't even look like a good morning, by the way, versus a power squat. And in a power squat, you should have that. In a power squat, it should look like a good morning. And it does Watch every single person who holds a squat record. Watch how they squat. It's a good morning. It's the same movement. The good morning squat that people are talking about is basically your squat turning into an incorrect good morning, and you will never be able to use a heavy weight. Even a 600-pound squatter, if you put 500 pounds on the bar and they turn it into a good morning squat, they will miss it. But that 600-pound squatter might actually have a 600-pound good morning. Okay, good morning squat is when the bar goes past your feet, goes further forward. It passes your center of gravity. Well, if you got 500 pounds on the bar and you weigh 220, you're going to flip over when that happens. You're going to miss the lift. Okay, that's a good morning squat. A good morning itself, a true good morning, should look like a power squat, which is the way most people squat when they break records. Just that you're having a much softer bend of the knee. You're not doing a full bend of the knee. So if we use this logic, you want your good morning to be as high as your squat. Why? Because if you can good morning, let's say your goal is to squat 600 pounds and you're trying to get there and you can get your squat up or your good morning up to 600 pounds, you will never miss the top half of a squat. Why? Because your quads are not limiting you. Your quads are in a strong position. Once your knee is probably at about 45 degrees, right? Well, we know it, yeah, you guys know what I'm saying. We're talking about normally you're at 90, and then as you're coming up, once you reach the halfway point in a squat, your quads are in a strong position. Your quads will never fail the lift because they're strong in that position. They have a massive mechanical advantage. Most of the muscle fibers are now contracted, and you have a massive leverage advantage there. Okay? You're not going to have an issue. Your quads will not fail you. If anything fails you, it will be your inability to extend the hips and to push the chest and get the torso upright. Well, the good morning fixes that. So if you can get to whatever you want to hit on a squat, if you can get to that weight on a good morning, you will never, ever miss the top half of a squat. You will always make that lift. So then if that's the case, then the only weak link you have is your quads. But here's what I'm going to point out. If your max possible good morning is 400 pounds and you can squat 500 pounds, your quads are stronger than your hip extension. They're probably stronger than your upper back. More quad is not going to help you get a better squat at that point. It's only when all those other muscles have caught up with the quads that the quads become an issue. And it's very easy to build quads up. It's very, very easy. We have plenty of limitless tools. Every gym has limitless tools to build our quads. And squatting itself for volume will do it. It's all the other musculature that we're worried about with this. And this is why the good morning is the #1 squat accessory. That's why. It will do more for a power squat than any single other accessory movement that you will do. But you need to get strong at it. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.